with D-BT08 out in Japan and not too far behind in English, I wanted to test the 5 brand new ride lines coming out of that set to see which ones I'd like to further test and build in person. So I throw those 5 ride lines into a random number generator, and I got out Arkhite to test first. So this card I envision being a beatdown deck. You just want to use the fact that it can attack 4 times per turn, just beat down your opponent turn after turn until you eventually get a victory, using its power gain skill, which is not once per turn, for every time you call a monster to give it just a nice big buff to pressure your opponents. So as such, this is also a research focused deck, so we have to talk about the research I run here. And that is Torrent Energy Research. It's the only one I run. I run it 4 copies because I want to see this in my opening hand. The ride line, which is Arkhite, just the standard Arkhite ride line, searches me out 2. So I want to set up the 3 for my first grade 3 turn, because this is what gives my will+Dress and Goku Terra 5,000 power, as well as lets Arkhite set up the order zone instead of just having to overhaul something. So thus, it just made sense to run 4. There are other research cards I could run, but honestly, I decided that I want to try to run this more pure to see how it truly feels before kind of messing with that sort of ratios, just because then you start getting into messing with the number of monsters you have in deck and also your like soul usage. Yeah, I just decided that I wanted to test this out first, and just running this before made the most logical sense because it sets up everything. Other cards notably are Craggy Monster, not Beast, Craggy Monster has been eroded, Gear Grant, PG that can be added to hand based off of Torrent Energy Research. That's a cool synergy. I think it's quite nice to be able to add PGs, especially for a deck that really wants to grind out the game. So I opted to run it over the Violate Dragon or the Planet Wall Dragon. And of course I run one of the Order PG just because bypassing guard restrict and free PG against grade 4s. For the other grade 1s, starting to get into the monsters. So other than the triggers, the rest are monsters. That should be 22 monsters. So really hard to miss off of top 7. But of course I run the Radio Wave Monster will+Dress for that extra draw. That's the main use for Soul. Soul Blast 2 is a bit expensive, but we don't run anything else in Soul. Just the extra plus to help us with longevity. And it's a 13k attacker, which is quite nice. 23k off of the Arkhite's ability. Can still be 15k shield, but I think the more notable thing is under Persona Red, it's 33,000, which is a really nice number. So also I run Bulba Mine just because I want to make sure I always have a counterblast for Arkhite's ability. Extra soul for will+Dress to get that extra draw to help us survive a bit longer will be nice. Moving on to the grade 2s, 3 Technion just to help me more easily find my Torrent Energy Research to make sure I always have that third one going to my grade 3 turn. Discard during ride line, search it out, can get some pluses potentially. It really isn't reaching its full potential because I'm only running 4 research orders, but I still think it's crucial just to make sure I get it. There really isn't that many other good monsters, and grabbing my 4th one still is also really good. Just a random plus every now and then will be great. And the reason I bring that up is because I do run the Alcidiran as another way for discard synergy to trigger Technion. I know it's probably a bit of a pipe dream. Maybe there's a better monster I could run, but there isn't too many good monsters. Like, sure, I could run Zeppakani for an on-hit draw, but that's pretty expensive as well. And plus I need the boost. I don't know how easy it would be to get the boost. But I figure this is a good start, just a clear synergy with Technion. Maybe I'll be able to grab like my 4th research order and I'll be able to go plus off of that. That's pretty cool. And just some hand filter, get some monsters in the drop zone so I can add them with my orders. And then also be able to cycle my hand into better shield guard cards, my Persona rides. Seems pretty good to me. And just being able to make a 20k with my Vanguard's ability doesn't seem too bad either. Finally, I run the Goku Terra at 4, just one of my best attackers. 18 on its own, 28 off of Arkhite. Good utility effect and retire, just to kind of keep my opponent off certain annoying cards. Even calling command more cards to board seems alright to me in a deck that really seems like it just needs to really utilize these utility effects to a T for that long game, over just be able to beat down your opponent turn after turn after turn. So this one seemed like an obvious inclusion there. And then finally on to the triggers. I run 7 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal, 1 over trigger. 7 crit, really talk about the 4 draws, I think, in this deck that wants for longevity. I just want to see more pieces, and draws let me do that. And just a draw on defense feels so good. So I figured that I'd rather go for the draw to survive than the crits to potentially beat my opponent down sooner. I feel like that this just is more consistent, is a good way to put it. Notably, I also only run the 5k crits because my thought process is with Decker Cop, if I'm putting a soul, what am I putting a soul for? Extra use of will+Dress. If I'm using will+Dress, why am I just not keeping the 15k shield? And these two, the 5k crit just make better numbers if I have to call them down to end off the game with my grade 1s and grade 3s, which are notably in more abundance than my grade 2s. Finally, heal. I figure this would just make the most sense. if I see I'm running into a lot of, say, Maelstroms or Tegrias, I can easily switch out into 2 like Lady Healer of the Creaking World to get that extra shield value. So that's a pretty easy switch out. I just figured great starting point for it. But yep, that is the list I come out for Arkhite to test what I think about it. So let's get into the games. So this first game here is against Grahamgrace. So good opening hand, or decent opening hand here. Got 2 Arkhites and a Weebros start drawing. Tactian, great for the ride line. And yeah, you can see the Grahamgrace in hand. Wasn't too obvious with the Wingull. First I thought it was against Majesty Lord Blaster. But here obviously hoping to see order off of the Tactian discard for ride line. Opponent notably discarding Maple, riding Marin. And I think the Blaster ride line makes a lot of sense for Grahamgrace in this Sonata support. But yeah, discard Tactian, I do not end up finding my Torrent Energy Research off of it, but I do get to add one from ride line's ability. And I notably drew first to maximize my chance of seeing it. And here I accidentally was trying to, I didn't realize this would happen with what was going on. So I choose to discard to get to soul there one. That monster, the Seadra, or that's not the name, I'm forgetting it, but Craggy monster, wanted to add the PG to hand. So 2 Bulbamine as well for some nice countercharge support here, just swinging because I knew he could possibly be going into a retire with the blasters, so just didn't want to give my opponent that ability. So unfortunately, haven't seen my 3rd research order despite being able to draw first, get off a Tactian, but hopefully we'll be able to see it. I think I did the order draw, then Tactian, which would be correct, just to maximize my chance of seeing it off the draw. And I mean, you can make an argument for search then draw, but here I discard Bulbamine to set up for my Bulbamine heal here off despite the crit, which is really nice to see. Top 5, see a Weebros I can set up, Goku Terra to add to hand, just kind of building up a good slew of monsters to be able to start attacking with. So go Goku Terra and throw the Weebros into the drop zone, and then of course now I can just add the Weebros back to Soul as well, or sorry, up to my orders as well as the Bulbamine, and I can always set up the Tactian for later as well. So I choose just to swing, figuring that my opponent might have more retire, just save up my monsters to be able to maximize my Arkhite, my grade 3 Arkhites usage to give them 10k power. And here's where I actually finally figure out that he is on Grahamgrace. I was like intrigued by the Maple and the Cadwalla here, but finally made sense once I saw Grahamgrace. Haven't played against this yet, so it was a real fun one to kind of figure out, especially with this. Well, he didn't use the promo here, but is it? Yeah, no, it's a double rare. Okay, my bad. Not the promo. There's another promo. This is the promo. But just throwing down at the Solda Zarkab just makes sense for the attack. Not wanting to commit too much. Not quite sure if that was correct or not from my opponent's side, but checking over trigger here. Very interesting. So now, and since he has no rear guards, doesn't matter with Goku Terra, I choose to discard it so I can get the power off of Goku Terra later. I really just want the counterblast for Arkhite, and thankfully I do have it. So Weebros here to draw and see my 3rd Torrent Energy Research. Really nice to see here. Can easily just set that up. And actually, of note, didn't realize this at the time, the grade 1 and the grade 3 Arkhite are actually monsters. So I made a mistake in the deck profile, probably added up a correction there that in fact the grade 3 is a monster, so I have 26 monsters. I should have 26 monsters in my deck. Actually, no, 25 monsters? 25 monsters, it's only 3. So here, can't see the chat, but I was just asking to declare effects because I forgot how to do it in here. It shows how often I'm in CFA. But here, I'm able to throw back a Weebros to give it 10,000 power. So now it is swinging in once I set up this one for 23k. That is great. Great top deck search here. Can grab another Weebros. I believe that's what I do. Yep. And I choose to discard the Goku Terra as well, just because I don't want a grade 3 in deck. I'd rather set it up. And I can just throw the Goku Terras in, throw the Tactians, just a ton of stuff into the order zone to save up for later. And then, of course, I got Persona Ride to be able to draw off a Weebros next turn. So now I'm just debating what I want to call down. So I choose to do the Goku Terra because I have 2 Goku Terras in there to set up. And I'd rather just have a 28k attacker here, even if I'm not getting value from the discard. And then Bulbamine, great because Arkhite doesn't give power herself. So now I can just set up a better column here. And I choose not to, I should have a Bulbamine in here. I choose not to use it, figuring that I'd rather save it for a later Bulbamine. I just want this to hit 21k to hit a good column. So the Gratias Gradale, I could technically run in this deck, but I don't think it's too worth it with the Torrential Energy researches overall. And this deck can easily add the Arkhites of note. So here I can throw the Goku Terra in. Another great thing, because now if I call Goku Terra, I have 2 setups. So I'm not hurting for those at all. and gets a top 7 check. And I actually forgot to give the Weebros 5k so far. So this is 23k. So I only find the Alcedrin. That's the name. I do have an Alcedrin in my order zone to be able to give this 10k. And here I could use the discard to draw, but honestly, what would I discard? All these are great. Weebros to draw and set up more power. Ooh, crit's really great here. Ton of triggers, PGs, 2 Persona Rides. Yeah, nothing I really want to discard. And a draw here. So I have a massive hand off of this Arkhite. And a Goku Terra is quite nice for next turn as well. I have 2 sub in order zone. I can put to Soul Draw. I'm just sitting very well here. So my opponent forced to PG here, or to PG out as well. So I'm actually feeling really good here, and I'm quite surprised at this stage that I'm at here. Big hand, powerful board presence, low damage, admittedly from the over trigger, but even though it's at higher damage, not too bad here with this hand as well. So my opponent goes into their Persona Ride, gains all the power to their board. That's really strong. And we'll see what ends up drawing and calling. I believe he calls the promo here, which does give Grand Brace 10k and an extra drive. So Grand Brace will be 30k triple drive. Pretty strong there. And then the Soul does Arkhite from BT9, just letting me, so this won't be relevant in matchup for BT8, but still very interesting, just the extra draw from it to help fuel Grand Grace. And they have, yeah, this card countercharges here, the Tenalaru, just helping get back some soul and power for Grand Grace. So again, just swinging here for 33k. I just choose to take it because why use the cards to guard? I can check defensive triggers to make it easier to guard these. That's just 1 damage. Triple drive here. Trying to remember what I did. I could totally see PGing this. And yeah, I do. I choose to use the Craggy Geargand. It doesn't really matter here with the orders, but my opponent just swings with triple drive, and then checks over trigger here, which is quite, it would be scary if double draw here. Did I miss something? No, it was the final drive check. That's what it is. Just went really quickly. So double Persona Ride, same. So I choose to PG this for obvious reasons. It's got the crit. But yeah, double over trigger here. Really scary if I was at higher damage. My own over trigger made this one a bit less scary to deal with. So I believe here I just choose to no guard because even if he checks a crit here, but does set up his hand quite nicely. Now, one thing that my opponent did admit is they realized they forgot to use the Maple here, so they didn't really need to commit the Cadwalla, which, fair point, but at the same time, it does let him use the Cadwalla's effect overall. So I don't know if it's necessarily a misplay, because he can, of course, try to cycle into more stuff, especially since he didn't have any Persona Rides before. I could totally see that being a fine play as well. He doesn't have any of the promo grade 3 to throw in the back either, so there's an argument to be made for that. So here, Persona Ride, of course, and yeah, my numbers are looking great for this turn as well. Weebros, of course, Soul Blast 2, draw a card, and then, of course, Arkhite's ability. I think I have a Weebros in here. I can see. I do not have a Weebros, but that's fine. These are just boosters. So I think here I opt to Goku Terra because I can take off one of the Zarkobs, and I do just that. Doesn't really matter which one, just kind of keep them off those, force them to commit a bit more cards. I have the Counterblast, it's not an issue, and I can power this one up. So got a 33 column here, got another 33k attacker, 23k Vanguard, which is perfectly fine, as well as another 13k booster for whatever I decide to call off of the Arkhite. So that will be a minimum 33, technically with an 8k, it would be minimum 31k column. Not bad. So my opponent does heal here. Pretty powerful. Lets him guard these a bit easier. 23k Vanguard isn't as great because my opponent can just throw down a 15k and make it a 2 to pass. And they know I don't have my over trigger as well. But here, throw out the Goku Terra. And I do get the Weebro, so here it should be a 36k column, if I'm not mistaken, because, yeah, he throws down the 2. I do get the draw. And, yeah, just decided to give it here. Draw a heal, Tectian, doesn't really matter too much. Might be able to find myself a final one. But 43k, really powerful. My opponent heals again. That's really powerful to keep him in the game, especially looking at his hand here. 3 grade 3s. And he doesn't have too bad of columns, but this is still huge pressure. Definitely the extra power helping him here. Fortunately, I didn't have the soul to use another Weebros, but that's perfectly fine. I can always overcall it, throw it in there if need be, or I can just try to swing with it because it's still 23k attacker on its own, which isn't bad. So remembers the Maple here, just to get an extra card in the back row. And what is it? You may call if you called an extra 5k. Yeah, pretty good. 13k booster. Did I read that right? If you don't have a reader, yeah, I read it right. So that's pretty good. Of course, your set of Grand Grace gets called a promo again. Hit for really nice numbers because, of course, these will all be swinging for, well, these are all plus 10k as well due to the Persona Ride. It's not showing up as well. So here, my opponent then, I think they forgot to call the other Maple. Maple's admittedly a pretty hard one to remember sometimes. I know I've totally done as well. But here, using the fact that he healed to get some extra counterblast, draw some more cards, and to get extra advantage to help tank my next turn. As we can see with their hand, they do have the other Grand Grace. Well, they've got quite a bit of shield value, but probably just wants to dig for another PG as well. So here, attacking 33k, and is, yeah, because it gets 10k from Grand Grace's ability. Quite nice as well. So 33k, I decide just to take it. Again, it's a huge number, and it's just 1 damage. Try to check a trigger. If I check a trigger, it makes it a whole lot easier to guard the Grand Grace. It can just be a 15k plus maybe an ameliorate connector after counting triggers. And also just helps me better guard those as well. So with that, my opponent, of course, goes Grand Grace into Vanguard after using the skill. So now it's at triple drive, and I believe I just PG here because, oh no, I do not have any PGs. So I go, that puts me at 43.58. I know his overtrigger's out, so it's a 3 to pass, which is where I need it at. So I definitely have plenty of shield there, but obviously an extra would be nice. So crit there onto his Tenelaru, making that a pretty big column that I need to guard. 48, but of course I have to guard 43 plus the Ameliorate connector 53. Easy to guard, and I can always just take the Maple column. I believe I choose to do so. 43k. I see no reason to guard. I can go up to 5 damage, and now by doing that, if my opponent has any heals left, which I don't know if they do, I can easily damage deny them on the 5th damage, so they would have to check it specifically 6 damage. So that's another big reason to take that damage there. So I think he does still have 2 triggers unaccounted for. But of course, I Persona Ride, and I choose just to go to battle phase. Not really see any reason to commit anything more than just this, just because this isn't necessarily a better attacker than the Weeberos here. And of course, I can throw Weeberos in there and have a chance if I have a Weeberos in deck. Do I have a Weeberos in deck? Looks like I do have a Weeberos in deck. So here I do pull the Goku Terra, which is really strong. This is going to be a huge attacker. I can snipe the Maple as well to get rid of an intercept. And yeah, which is exactly what I do. And then, yep, 23k, looking pretty nice. My opponent chooses to no guard it, and it takes the damage, and that is game. Looking at his hand, though, I think my opponent was just a bit frustrated about keep missing timing on Maple and keep forgetting to do it, and just kind of was done. But let's see if my opponent, so my opponent could have thrown down an Alpaca. That would put him at 33k. I think it's important to see, did my opponent have a way to guard it? So Alpaca plus, say, the Soldak here would have been enough to guard. So 2-card guard, or even the Maple. That would probably be a better guard. So that would have been a 2 to pass, which would have been fine. So then I would have a 43k attack. So that's an Alpaca plus a 15k. So definitely have that. Goku Terra would have been a 46k attack. And at that point, he still has an Alpaca and at least 2 creatures. So yeah, my opponent could definitely tanked this this game as well. So I don't know why I didn't try to go for it, honestly. But at the end of the day, I think this did show that this deck was actually pretty good at filtering the hand and building up a lot of great guard, good power columns, and the Weeberos and Goku Terra did exactly what they needed to. So I think it's still worthwhile sharing, but at the same time, I don't think it's the best game to show how good is this deck, because obviously I wasn't putting off enough pressure to kind of chip through this hand. But my opponent's also close to deck out, so that's always an option. So with that, let's move on to game 2. All right, game 2, we're speeding up this a bit more because I think the last game moved a bit slowly. So here I'm actually up against Chronojet, and this one I'm terrified about because I feel like this is going to be a hard matchup for me because Chronojet scales so well, and I'm trying to play the grand game. So here, I keep my hand because I think it is very good. Of course, discard the Weeberos, grab the Torrential Energy Research. I have one in opening hand, so I can guarantee 3 as well. So looking quite nice because Bulbul Mine's great, PG's nice, Weeberos, Goku Terra, yeah, perfect. So great setup here to begin with, discarding an Alcedian because it's definitely the weakest card. And of course, same to Weeberos, 2 Weeberos here. Just to use up the Mazer Gear after setting up, I'm fine with that. Discard the Ameliorate connector because I want to keep my pieces, and that's not 10k shield until my opponent goes to grade 3, and I'm getting to grade 3 first. So here, Here's where I actually forgot that Arkhite's a monster, and thankfully my opponent was nice enough to let me grab it back. And that was frankly because I don't know where I got that misconception. I think I just never fully read the card name, honestly. So reading card games, kind of important. So I secured myself a Persona Ride copy, even though I don't get something to set up the board at the order zone. But at the same time, I don't have a bad setup either, with the will+Dress at least. So here my opponent, of course, rides up, just swings, take a crit to the face, by check over trigger, making it kind of null and void and getting an extra draw. Another will+Dress. Order PG is phenomenal in this matchup against the grade 3, so I'm so happy to see it. So I discard another will+Dress because I can't use both of them, so I'd rather just get another one to order zone for my fourth one. And of course, that one up. I've got a Bulbamine here. Again, all those triggers, that kind of hurts a little bit. I had the Alcedrian. So I set up the Bulbamine for the Bulbamine, figuring I could call Alcedrian as another attacker if need be. Another PG as well, so I'm looking great for these. So of course I set up my will+Dress yet again, 23, really nice when my opponents, well, they really just make difference when my opponents are grade 2 or grade 3, so I shouldn't say that. So here I call the Alcedrian, set it back, set up the 20k, and I think here I just start swinging. Maybe I commit the Bulbamine. I don't think I commit the Goku Tear here. I think I do save it to try to get some retire pressure as well, especially since I don't actually have a Goku Tear set up yet. So yeah, I do choose to do that, figuring that's better value. Set up the will+Dress into the order zone again if I get a call off of that. So here I don't have the best one. I do pull out a Goku Terra, so it's just getting the 5k, but again, that's kind of what I needed to see, because now if my opponent deals with it, I can put it in order zone if they attack over or retire it, or I can easily just bind it with, or put it to order zone with Arkhite. So here my opponent does end up guarding some of those and taking one, but still feeling pretty good with my hand here, pretty beefy going into my opponent's grade 3 turn. Really like to see that. So going straight into the stride into Fate Rider, using Bali to get some advantage, and he actually bot decks the Goku Terra. So no advantage off of it, but alas, that just means another Goku Terra in my deck for when I go Goku Terra rear guard, and then possibly put it to order zone with Arkhite. So here, swinging with the upstream dragon, I just intercept with this. I see no reason. It's a cheap guard, and I'm just kind of wanting to replace my board for the power gain anyway. And I do not have an EMOS check team, but that's fine. So here, check a heal. So some defensive power goes Fate Rider after attacking with Bali, which is the damage I take, and just do some of the timely shenanigans with the GG to plus, and then go back into upstream. Really powerful, but I choose to use the Gear Grand and save the Elementarius Sanctitude for later. And here does get the crit, but here, of course, I can take it if I so choose to. Big Colin with Brainwash Sword, and I just choose to take it because now I can heal block him and have plenty of counterblast to do some Goku Terra stuff. And I feel like my hand's good enough where I can tank another turn. So here, I'm kind of just wanting to make something happen, as opposed to maybe just trying to use the PG to guard that, because my opponent can easily start checking more crits as well. So I felt like this was the better option than possibly just having my opponent heal down. So here, Goku Terra, get rid of the Bali too, because it's Brainwash Swirlers. Their use cases are limited now to unless they just my opponent calls another one. So I figure that's the best bet. So now I've got 80 monster tech and don't really have much discard synergy with it. I have my 3 orders set up, so that's fine. So again, I can just go Goku Terra, Goku Terra here, really powerful. Get rid of Brainwash Swirler. I've still got, I mean, this still makes a 38k column. My numbers are just phenomenal here. My opponent has to use Overtrigger to guard that. It's really powerful. My opponent chooses to take that one, and now he has to guard it, and he can. And actually, he needs 5k more, and just has to throw down that because he's trying to hold pieces to attack with. So it goes into next stage here. This one actually was not as worried about as more worried about another Fate Rider turn, just because my opponent can do more timely bounce back shenanigans that way. But here of note, I'm thinking to myself, all right, I need to be able to block that Chrono Jet. So normally, Elementarius Sanctitude, actually, that's the reason I held the Elementarius Sanctitude was in case of the Chrono Jet. I forgot about that. So I could get a free PG here, but I can save it for the Chrono Jet and just block it without it having to commit a ton of cards in hand. And that's what I actually choose to do here, using the fact that it bypasses Chrono Jet's guard restrict. Huge here. And I think that was probably I'm so happy I realized it's one of my favorite plays from this game. And I really think allowed me to actually outlive this, because my opponent really isn't plussing much. So that's the other thing about next stages, not really plussing too much here at all. So here, just going upstream, and Yeah, sorry, pause there. I was off by 5k, so I just switched to two 15k shields. I think I guarded, or there was some sort of delay in the numbers being added so that I didn't pay attention to the roll rate. I could be wrong, but that's, I think, what happened on my end. So here, just save the Brainwash Swirler. Really powerful, powerful booster, but I do save the Order PG. And whew, I'm pretty sure that saved me here. And now, of course, 43,000. But of course, I have all straight casts in my hand. I just throw them all down. I see no reason to intercept the Tectian. Persona Ride as well. Couldn't have been better. I don't know if my opponent really would have been able to tank it. He could have blocked 2 attacks pretty easily, but he only then had 15k. So I don't know if the Persona Ride mattered too much here. But still, it just helps secure this game even more, even through like a heal per se. So Goku Terra again, forced to guard and intercept, Arkhite, bind, and I get to just call another Goku Terra. Huge numbers. And of course, just my opponent setting up for a PG, and here he can guard 1 attack, but he's got to deal 2 more. I check the crit, and this pretty much just seals the game. I go Goku Terra here, my opponent knows they just have to kind of top deck a heal, and that's that. So that is game 2. I actually winning against Chronojet. I haven't played the deck myself, so I can't really comment on how optimal this Chronojet player was playing as well. But at the same time, I do think this was a great showing of what Arkhite can do, just building up a really tanky hand, hitting phenomenal numbers, and just beating down your opponent in the late game. So honestly, I was thoroughly impressed with Arkhite. So that was Arkhite. I think the only things I'd really change about this deck in terms of like keeping it more faithful to my original intention is I'd probably cut the Tectian and the Alcidiran. I think the theory's there, but honestly, these cards really felt dead towards the latter half of the game. Like most of the time my hand was so refined I didn't need the Alcidiran, and Tectian whipped more often than not. Like it's great going first, or not going first, but great on your turn 1, but past that, So my recommendations probably would be to switch out Alcidiran for Cyclogarde, just an extra 5k shield means a 10k intercept or a 10k shield in hand. That, of course, you can then bounce to the other zone to be able to set up if you call more of them, just to make the deck more beefier. I don't think the ability to put a monster from drop into order zone is too relevant. I didn't really have too much issue with that. Honestly, don't know why I didn't include this in the deck. I think it was just set on these two. And I think the other change I would say is probably either run Mega Grotto for more boosters, with a booster with a counter charge pressure as well. Might be nice just to make sure that you can keep using your Arkhite turn after turn, as well as using the Mega Grotto as well. And the only other option I could think of is maybe Adaptin for 10k boosters for Weberos and Vanguard, as well as the Mega Grotto. Goku Terra. I meant Goku Terra there. So those are really options. I don't think you really want to include the Grade 2s. You could test Zabo Kokani, but I think it's really expensive and not worth it. And of course, still a great slew of attackers between Cyclogarde, Weberos, and Goku Terra. So I don't think you need many more attackers as well. Other notes, of course, is that you can test out some of the different research orders in this deck to see how that can affect the deck's performance. I just kind of held off to them because, of course, they would lower my monster count, technically making the deck less consistent on that front. And yeah, I just want to test more pure monsters, so there is testing to be done there. But overall, I feel like the testing for this deck is very limited right now, and I think what I experienced in my games is a good showing of what Arkhite has to offer. It's more than I initially thought, especially now that I know Arkhite has monster in her card name, so I can search her off of the order. That's fun, and I'm just surprised with how just smooth the deck felt to pilot overall. So I'm so glad I tested out this deck. Even though I think I'll have other decks I'd rather build in person and test out, I do think I could see this being a deck when it gets more support that I come back to later on CFA just to see how it feels. Because honestly, I really enjoyed playing it overall. But when I look at building decks in person, I look for decks that I know that I'm going to really want to test. And unfortunately, Arkhite just isn't it, honestly. But if you're interested, I hope this video was helpful. And I'd love to hear what stuff you're testing in it. Even if I don't want to test it, I still love hearing what other people are doing. Just reality situations as to make choices on what I want to test with my time. But that being said, though, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below what your thoughts are, and of course, if you're testing Arkhite, as I said, leave comments below. What are you testing in it? I'd love to hear. And of course, if you've been enjoying these content, I'm going to be doing a video for each of the 5 new ride lines coming out of D-BT08. So subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you're notified when I upload those videos, as well as any other content that I decide to put out there. So look forward to more stuff coming out real soon.